Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something pretty serious, uh, a massive explosion in Iran at the port city of Bandar Abbas.
Yeah, the early reports are quite stark. At least 28 people killed, hundreds injured at Shahid Rajaee port.
Okay, so let's try and unpack this.
Right.
Because this port, Shahid Rajaee, its location alone makes this significant, doesn't it?
It really does. Bandar Abbas is right there, near the Strait of Hormuz. Now, for you following global events, especially if you're prepping for, say, UPSC exams, you know this strait.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a vital choke point. A huge amount of the world's oil, maybe a fifth, passes right through there. So anything major happening nearby, well, it gets noticed globally.
And the timing, too. I mean, anyone watching international relations would spot this straight away.
Yeah.
This happened just as Iran and the U.S. started, what, a third round of nuclear talks? In Oman? Now, to be clear, there's no confirmed link. We have to state that up front.
Right, no established connection.
But still, for keeping up with current affairs, especially for UPSC mains, that timing is interesting, worth watching closely.
Definitely.
So our mission today in this deep dive is really to piece together what we know from the news reports, what happened, what might have caused it, the importance of a place, and the bigger picture implications, particularly for you tracking international events and this kind of strategic infrastructure.
Okay, so let's start with the immediate aftermath. The head of the Iranian Red Crescent, Pir Hossein Kulavand, he confirmed the death toll, at least 28.
Grim numbers.
And over 1,000 injuries reported at the port itself. Some of the seriously injured had to be airlifted to Tehran for more specialized treatment. It really highlights the human cost here.
And the visuals described, they sound intense. A vast black and orange cloud of smoke seen over the port.
Yeah, and reports of serious structural damage, too. An office building, doors blown off, debris everywhere.
The power of it.
Yeah.
Fars and Tasnim news agencies said the blast was felt, what, 50 kilometers away?
50 kilometers. And that most of the port buildings took heavy damage. It makes you wonder what could cause an explosion that powerful.
Exactly. And that's where things start to get a bit, well, we have different accounts emerging.
Right. The first official word came from Iran's crisis management organization. The spokesperson, Hossein Zafari,
Yes.
he suggested it was likely due to poor storage of chemicals in containers. He even mentioned that the Director General of Crisis Management had actually warned the port about potential hazards before.
Warned them before. Okay, that's a significant detail. It points towards potential negligent, issues with safety protocol.
It certainly raises those questions. Then you had the port's customs office putting out a statement, pretty much aligned with the Zafari.
Yeah.
They said a fire started in the storage depot for hazardous and chemical materials, and that led to the explosions. A regional emergency official also confirmed multiple containers went up.
So the initial official line is accident, bad chemical storage, fire, boom, a chain reaction.
That's the narrative so far from official sources. But, like you often see in these situations, other possibilities are being floated.
Such as?
Well, the New York Times ran a report. They cited a source, someone apparently connected to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps,
Okay.
suggesting the explosion involved sodium perchlorate.
Sodium perchlorate. Hold on. Isn't that used in?
Exactly. It's a component in solid propellant for missiles.
Wow. Okay, that's very different from just poorly stored chemicals. Finding that in a general depot would be highly unusual, surely.
Highly unusual. It's production, it's storage, usually under very tight control. Military or specialized industrial oversight. So that possibility, if true, shifts the implications dramatically, away from just an industrial accident.
That's a huge potential difference. So what's the government saying about that specific chemical possibility?
Well, an Iranian government spokesperson did acknowledge chemicals were likely involved, but essentially said the exact cause is still undetermined. They're investigating.
All right, so it leaves the door open. For you listening, especially those preparing for UPSC, it's really important to track these different narratives and the uncertainty that always surrounds the early stages of events like this.
Definitely. Now, let's circle back to the port itself, Shahid Rajaee. We mentioned its location near Hormuz.
Yeah.
But its importance to Iran specifically is massive. It's their biggest container hub, handles the vast majority of the country's container goods.
So when we say biggest container hub, what does that translate to in real terms for Iran's economy? A disruption there must have serious knock-on effects.
Huge effects. Logistically, economically, it impacts supply chains, imports, exports, everything. And the question then becomes, can other ports pick up the slack?
And can they?
Not really, not to the same capacity. Iran has other ports, of course, but none that can just absorb the volume that Shahid Rajaee handles.
Okay, so that really underscores the potential impact. And, looking back, this doesn't seem like a totally isolated incident, does it? In terms of problems at Iranian facilities.
No, unfortunately not. There has been a pattern, really, over the last few years. Deadly incidents at energy sites, industrial infrastructure, often blamed on negligence, much like the initial explanation here.
Right, I remember reports. Refinery
fires, yeah. A bad coal mine gas explosion. Even an incident at Bandar Abbas itself, just last year. During repairs, someone died. It does make you wonder about systemic safety issues or perhaps other factors.
And that brings in the whole geopolitical context, inevitably.
Precisely, because Iran has pointed fingers in the past, particularly towards Israel, for some incidents.
Like the gas pipeline attacks earlier this year, February 2023.
Yes, that one. And also, maybe more relevant here, a cyber attack back in 2020 that specifically hit the computer systems at guess where? Shahid Rajaee port.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The Washington Post reported at the time that was likely Israel retaliating for an alleged Iranian cyber operation.
So there's history there, specifically at this port.
There is. And you layer onto that Israel's known concerns about the U.S.-Iran nuclear talks, their position on Iran's nuclear program. While Iran insists its program is peaceful, it just adds layers of complexity when trying to understand something like this explosion.
Absolutely. And again, we need to stress no confirmed links to, external actors in this blast right now. It's early days.
Correct.
But that history, the regional tensions, you can't just dismiss other possibilities out of hand, can you? Beyond simple negligence, which raises that big question for strategic analysis. Could this be more than just an accident? What are the implications if it is?
Meanwhile, on the ground, the Iranian government has reacted. President Pezeshkian ordered a full investigation. Yeah. And the Interior Minister, Eskandar Momeni, he went straight to the site.
And what's the status update from him?
He's reported that the situation in the main operational parts of the port is now stable. Fires are out. And they're working to get loading and customs clearance back up and running, trying to minimize the disruption, basically.
Which is obviously crucial for trade. But as you think about this for your UPSC prep, those underlying questions about the cause, about the long-term security of Iran's key infrastructure, they're not going away quickly, are they?
No, they'll likely remain significant concerns, both for Iran internally and for regional stability more broadly.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap. Huge explosion, Iran's biggest container port, Shahid Rajaee. Initial story. Bad chemical storage.
Right, but then you have this alternative report mentioning potential missile fuel components, the official cause, still under investigation.
And this happens against a backdrop of previous incidents at Iranian sites, plus ongoing regional tensions and nuclear talks.
Exactly, a complex picture.
So what's the takeaway for you, our listener, especially if you're deep in UPSC preparation?
Well, events like this, particularly at super strategic spots like the Strait of Hormuz, understanding them is just vital for keeping tabs on global affairs.
The context matters so much. The international talks, the regional dynamics, the potential fallout from incidents like this can touch on international relations, economic stability, infrastructure security, all key areas, really, for both prelims and mains.
Couldn't agree more. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Considering that history of incidents in Iran and the whole sensitive geopolitical climate, what might be the longer-term consequences? For Iran's infrastructure security, yes, but also for the stability of the wider Middle East.
It's a tough question. No easy answers right now.
Yeah.
But definitely something to keep thinking about as this story develops. If you, yes, you, the dedicated UPSC aspirant listening in, found this deep dive helpful for your daily current affairs work, or even just for getting some perspective for prelims, do give us a like, subscribe, maybe leave a comment if you have more questions.
We appreciate that.
And just to mention, our analysis today was based primarily on reporting from NDTV. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.